Come on down to Gormo's shed, come in and say g'day. We might run some trains or do some other stuff today. I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna have some fun down in Gormo's shed. Down in Gormo's shed. G'day folks, and welcome to Gormo's Shed, episode 6. Where did they all go? Anyway, what we're doing today is taking a look at a bit of a technique I've developed for doing my platform surfaces. Those of you that follow my topic on platform 1, Great Chesterford Junction, would have seen a bit of this already, but this is just hopefully an in-depth look at how I do the work on the top of the platforms. So we'll go and have a look and see what I've been doing. On the top of my platforms I glue with PVA sandpaper, white sandpaper, and the idea is that it gives a surface similar to stone, I suppose, but it can also replicate tarmac, as you can see on the platform here that I've done earlier. I've got a mixture of stone effects here and a bit of tarmac, and then a variation in the tarmac as well. So the way we achieve that is with chalk pastels, and to achieve it with chalk pastels I first mark out my platform edges, and I do that with a scribing tool with a blade in it. So I mark out my edge paving first, and then I run electrical tape along the line that I've scored. And I just rub the electrical tape down close to the line. I don't rub it down all over the sandpaper, and because that's the only part that needs to seal, is right along the line. And then I mark out the areas I want to work on, and you know, I usually do a small area at a time, because you've got to wait for this stuff to dry as well. It takes a little while to dry, but not too long. And then once it's marked out, I do the edges first with my chosen shade of grey chalk pastel, and then once that's done, I let the edges dry, and then remove the tape, and then go over the edges with the tape and do the middle. Once it's all dry, I come along with a little marking tool and a scribe, and I start doing the paving. That's the fun bit. But anyway, I'll just show you how I do a bit of this pastel on here. You can see I've got a bit there drying. See that's darker there in that part, and it's lighter there. Well, that was done earlier and that's dried, and that's exactly the same pastel there, so it dries to that colour on the edge. The stuff in the middle, I've used a darker shade of the pastel, but I've also added some brown in while it was wet and just stippled it to get that sort of stony looking effect. And once it's scribed, it'll come up like $1 million. So I'll just show you the technique for putting the pastel on. Well, what I'm doing is I'm taking a piece of chalk pastel in my chosen shade of grey. I've got a little tub of water, and I just dip the end of the pastel in the water, shake it off a bit, and then I don't start from the area I've just finished. I move away from it a bit, and then I just start rubbing the pastel into the sandpaper on the top here, and come up to the area I've just done, and it goes on like a paste, I suppose. That would be the best description for it. I'll just get a little bit more water and then just work my way along, putting a bit more on. That's a bit too much water there, that's a bit wet. Doesn't matter, it'll dry. And just work along, and I'll use the water that's in there to start my next area. So I'll work along, I'll go back and dampen there and take some of the water away at the same time. Now I just use a dry brush, and I hold it pretty much vertical to the work, and I just go along on the damp bits and just start working it like this, just pushing it around and making it look a bit more even. Right, now I just peel off the electrical tape. And there we have it. Okay folks, a difficult one to film, but this is where we've just been, and on this side, on the left hand side here especially, it's still a little damp here. You can see the coloration is different, and then as we move along to where I started just that short while ago, you can't see the join. Right folks, we'll just walk away from that now and let it dry. Right, I've got the tape stuck down, and I've decided to go with the same colour in the middle that I had there before. So there's no need to mask this end here, so we'll just go over that and do this area here. So we're just about ready to go. Okay, I've got my pastel ready and my water and my brush here somewhere. So I'll just dip the pastel in some water as before, and then just start working it in to the area away from the previous work, but I'll work up to that. The stippling again, we just do the vertical motion here, and because it's still a bit wet, it's not working that well. I'll just also do some sideways movement and spread it around a bit. I'll get into the wet areas and I'll use the moisture from that to work on some of the drier areas. Now I've got a brown pastel here which I'm just wetting, and I'm just going to put some dabs in here and there, just pushing down just at random, and I'll come back with the brush and start stippling those and spreading them out a bit so you get this variation in colour. Okay folks, that section is finished, and you think, well gee, that looks like rubbish there at the moment, and it does look like rubbish I suppose. But you can see just near the start of it here, I'll get my little pointer, it's starting to dry here to the lighter colour, and you can see it coming in near the edges. So this will dry quite a bit differently to what it looks like now. It'll be more like that, I suppose, I hope anyway. Well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Okay, it's not completely dry. Those dark sections there are still wet, those dark dots, but they will dry out as well. And this is how it's coming up. Now, if I can just get my pliers here. Now, if I put them there, that's the join, and you can actually see it when you get close to it. You can see there's a join there. But as I say, once we approach this area with the scribe, all these little things will all just sort of blend into the norm, if you like. So it's amazing how it's gone from that quite dark colour that you saw before when I was working on it, and it dries to this. So it's quite, you need to really do a lot of practice with this sort of thing on scrap, because the results aren't quite necessarily what you see when it's going down. They'll be different to what you see when it's going on. So you've got to anticipate that and understand what the pastels are going to do and how they're going to dry. Anyway, we better leave it at that. I'm running out of battery by the look of it, so I'll come back to you. Right folks, I've got my scribe set. I've taken it in one course of pavers, and I just measured it off the previous platform I've done, so we'll have consistent size pavers on both platforms. And I mark out the long lines first, and then we go across. So I'll just run this down the edge of the platform. again, we can't do the bit down there. I'll have to use the ruler for that, so I'll do that now, and I'll get back to you. I should point out that when I do one side, I then go over to the other side to make sure I keep consistent size courses that when you're coming in the same distance from the edge of the platform. So I'll do this side as well. And you've also got to think about how you're going to approach the paving courses, especially when on a platform like this you've got one straight edge for part of it, and then we go down to a curved edge on this side that I've just gone onto here, and I'll just go over that line again just to reinforce it a bit more. So yeah, it gets a bit tricky. You've got to think it out how you want it to look, and because what's happened with this one is it's come to a point just about here, so I've got to think about that a bit. Right, so what we've done is we've scribed a line on each side in the same distance each time, and you can see how they converge, and then I've got to work in the paving lines across the platform to sort of match up with this. So that's the way it's turned out. Might look a little weird, but it's unique. So that's the way we're going, folks, I'm afraid. Like it or lump it, that's it. So anyway, the next thing is to go across. So I've got a little tool to start working on that, so I'll show you that in a minute. Now this is my guide. I've just put a bit of aluminium angle screwed onto a block of wood, and you know, I use the angle as the spacer for in between my pavers. It's 10mm, which would be 2'6", which might be a bit on the big side, but then again it looks okay to me. So you know, rule number one applies here. My railway, my dimensions. So that's what I use, and I'll show you how I use it down the other end here, where we're going to start right at the end of the platform. So we'll move on down there, and I'll give you a squeeze at how that works. Right, I do one side at a time in this case, because one side is curved and one side is straight. So I'm going to start with the straight side, and I'll just put the tool on the very end of the platform, and then I have it at what I perceive to be a right angle to the edge of the platform, and then I simply mark my line with my little scribe. I hit it about 4 times, and it leaves a mark in the work here. You probably can't see that. And then I move along to the next one, simply putting the back of my angle there on the line I just made, and then just 1, 2, 3, 4. Also, occasionally with this scribe I'm using, you will lose the point on it, so every now and then I'm off to the grindstone and I put a new point on it. Otherwise you'll start making lines that are a bit too wide. So that's all I do. I work my way up the platform. It's a painstaking job, unfortunately, but it's surprising how much you can get done in a reasonably short time. And I only did 2 there. That's all it takes. Yeah, so that's it. You know, you just sort of carry on doing this for a while, and after a while you've got something that looks like a stone platform. Now folks, I've got the edges done. So when it comes to doing these internal courses here, it's bleeding obvious, but the courses that follow the line of that platform, you've got to follow the same angle that you took on the edge of the platform. Obviously stagger the courses, but you've got to do those ones that way, and the ones on this side that are square to the edge, and this is the straight edge, obviously there's 1, 2, 3 courses there where they will all be at a right angle to the edge in that direction. So you'll get courses going that way, and then on this side they'll be just off at a bit of an angle, just to try and make it all look as though a top-notch paving bloke did it. Yeah, I don't know whether it's the right way to do it, but you know, it seems to come up okay. So yeah, and in this case I'll work backwards, because it's probably easier for me to, I'm right-handed, it might be different for left-handers, but to be able to see the centre of the paver on the edge there, and take a point on that, and then obviously start my course here and scribe across there, that being the first course on that side, which means that the next one should be in that row there. So I'll miss a row and that will be on the same line, if you follow what I mean. So I'll do that now while I'm here and just scribe in there. I don't know whether you can see these lines, but there we go. So I'll work my way back that way, one side, then do the other. And in the middle here where it's quite narrow, where the two courses actually converge, I just have to get a bit creative in there and do some little ones in there. So I'll get stuck into that and I'll see you later. Well, there we go, folks. There's that section done, and that's how it's come up. The one thing that remains to be done on there is the little strip on the edge of the platform. And I used to find out pretty much the hardest part of doing platforms was putting in a nice even white strip on the edge. But I've found a method with this sandpaper, which is actually a piece of cake, and I'll show you that in a second. Right, because the sandpaper is white and I've covered it in pastel, I thought, why don't I just scrape the pastel off on the edge and leave the white showing. So I just got a snap-off blade and sandwiched it between a couple of bits of MDF, put a little bolt through it, and it sticks out, it's about 3 mils, 5 mils, something like that. Can't remember now, I'd have to measure it. And all I do is run that along the edge of the platform, and let's see if I can show you. It's a bit hard to get the camera in a good position, but we'll give it a go and see how it works. Hopefully it will work. So we just hold the jig against the edge of the platform with the blade running across the top of the surface and just drag it along. And you can see it starting to appear there. The beauty of it is that it's always the right width. And it's not absolutely perfectly white, which is good too, because the platform edge shouldn't be absolutely perfect unless it's just been repainted. How's that look? I'm just doing the other side now as well. That'll do. Ah, missed a bit. Yeah, the pastel is like a dust when you scrape it off. That'll do. Not bad. What do you reckon? Just do a bit of a zoom over. There we go. I've got to do the ends yet because the tool won't reach right to the very bottom at the end, so I'll have to fudge that with a blade. No trouble at all. Right, folks, that's it for the moment. That's my little insight into how I do my platforms over there. There's probably a few days work actually there, because the platform is it's got to be getting close to 1.7 meters, I suppose. My trains are 1.5 and they fit in there quite easily, so yeah, I haven't actually measured the complete length of it yet, but it's around that sort of distance. So what I'll be doing is just repeating everything I showed you there today, doing that over a few days, and when the platform's complete, I lay newspaper down over the tracks and sort of mask up all the areas and just leave the platform top exposed, and the sides, I suppose, it doesn't really matter about them. Leave them exposed, and then I give it a few coats of cheap hairspray to seal it, and making sure that you don't do them each coat too close to the next one. Let it dry properly, and you know, I might give it 6, 7, 8 coats, and then possibly even a matte varnish over that. We just have to see how it goes. You just test a little bit as you go to make sure that the surface is not coming away. So that's how we seal it, and that seems to work pretty well. So that's the process. As I said during the course of the video, it can be a bit mind-numbing, but hopefully you like the results there. I like it. So I've just got to work out now what I'm going to put in the rest of the sections, you know, maybe a bit of tarmac. I did think about brick at one stage today, and then I thought, no, those tiny little courses, you know, I don't want to go insane building this thing. I just, you know, want to get it over and done with. So there you go. So that's how it's done, folks. So that's the end of episode 6, and I'll see you online. Okay, cheers, Gormo. Come on down to Gormo's shed, come in and say g'day. We might run some trains or do some other stuff today. I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna